So the next type of troubleshooting we'll look at is a transaction audit. And in order to audit the transaction codes, you must have permission 850 in order to access the transaction codes module. And this permission set is only available if you have an owner admin or accountant user role. So if you have a clerk user role, you would not be able to access the transaction code audit or this permission. So just be mindful of that this may require additional escalation to your accounting or management team. So with this transaction code audit, what we're looking at is actually reviewing the settings or the setup of the GL accounts or general ledger accounts, transaction codes, and tax codes inside the database. Let's get started with the GL accounts, and you'll find these in the transaction codes module. So to access this module, like I said, you do need that permission set, but you'll find this module in system configuration and transaction codes. So this module opens up as a pop-up on screen, and you'll be able to go through the different auditing steps we'll look at here. Great. So when that transaction codes module opens up, you'll click the GL accounts tab, and that will show you a list of all of your general ledger accounts. What we want to look for first is any of your receivable accounts. Those three main accounts that are marked as receivable here with the receivable check mark. Those three accounts should be the deposit holdings, AR guest, and AR city. These are the only accounts that should have that receivable checkbox. If you come across another account, like this one, for example, this is bike rentals, this is marked as receivable. This will cause balancing issues on your reporting. So we need to remove this checkbox. We cannot have any other accounts marked as receivable. So in order to remove this checkbox, you're going to click the Modify button. Then you can remove the checkmark and click OK. Next thing you're going to do is take a look at all of the transaction codes. So again, it's the same module, transaction codes module, but this time you'll click the codes tab. And within that codes tab, you'll see the accounts tab. So this is the account that is attached to the room charge code, RCH, in this database example. When we're looking at this account, this is exactly what we want to see. We have a single line item that tells us that when this charge is used, it will credit the room revenue account and it will debit the AR guest. If it's used in the city ledger, it will debit the AR city and it will credit the room revenue account again. So this can be a little bit confusing to look at or read if you're not used to working with general ledger accounts and transaction codes. But one thing that you can look for is if you find any accounts with a date to. This is going to cause an issue because if you have a transaction code with a date to, it means that that revenue stops crediting that or debiting those accounts as of that date. So if I was to use this transaction code after November 10th, I would have revenue that is recorded as a transaction, but I don't have any debits or credits or have anywhere to put that revenue. So it actually appears as unknown revenue in the database, and that can cause balancing issues. The other issue is if the account is missing altogether. So if you don't see any accounts attached to a transaction code, this means that you have unknown revenue occurring in the database. The transaction is recorded, but the revenue has no place to credit or debit. There's no attached GL account. Okay. So for the transaction codes, we've got, depending on the size of your database and how many things you charge towards guests, you may have quite a list here in the transaction codes. But you'll notice in the top right corner that we've got them categorized into groups. So we've got room charge codes, other charge, special codes, and payment codes. For each one of these cases, you'll go through and look at the accounts tab for each transaction code and review if they have any of those issues, if they have a date to, or if they're missing a GL account. The last part of the audit is taking a look at the tax codes, and it's very much the same as the transaction code component, where you'll click the taxes tab and take a look at the accounts tab. Here we have the account is set up correctly, but if you have an instance where you have a date to value appearing here, or if you have a missing GL account altogether, note those tax codes and any of these issues if you find issues with the GL, the transaction code, or tax code. Now, in many cases, if you have these issues occurring in your database on any of your transaction codes or tax codes, you will need to notify our support team in order for them to fix those issues for you.